What if an entire class of children disappeared one morning, and no one ever found out why? What if, after nearly 3 decades, a single mother noticed something so small, yet so terrifying that it changed everything?
Stay till the end, because the truth behind this mystery will chill you to your core. Before we begin,
Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Kindness Tales Live, where true stories remind us that even in darkness, a little kindness and courage can uncover the light. It was supposed to be a normal school day in 1998. 24 children, laughing and running through the hallways of Evergreen Elementary, a small school tucked away in the fog-covered hills of Vermont. Parents dropped them off, teachers greeted them, and by 9 a.m. they were gone. Every last one of them. Police reports, search teams, helicopters, nothing. No broken locks, no signs of struggle, no footprints leading away. The classrooms were empty, lunchboxes untouched. It became one of the strangest unsolved disappearances in American history. Time passed, the story faded, and those who had lost their children were left only with pain and questions. Among them was Margaret Lane, mother of 8-year-old Ethan, a quiet boy who loved drawing maps and collecting rocks. Margaret never stopped searching. Every birthday she lit a candle, every Christmas she set an extra plate. But as years passed, her hope dimmed into silence. Her husband left, her friends moved on. Only she remained, haunted by the thought that maybe, just maybe, the children hadn't vanished. Maybe they'd been taken somewhere else. Fast forward to the present day, 27 years later. Margaret, now in her late 50s, lived alone in a small apartment surrounded by boxes of old newspapers and yellowed photos. One rainy evening, as thunder rolled across the sky, she pulled out the only class photo she had left, the one taken the day before the children disappeared. She'd looked at it 1,000 times before, but tonight felt different. Something caught her eye. It was faint, almost invisible. A reflection in the glass window behind the children. It wasn't the photographer or a teacher. It was a man, tall, wearing a dark coat, standing just outside the window. His face was blurred, but his eyes, those pale, hollow eyes, seemed to stare straight at the camera. Straight at her. Margaret's heart pounded. How had no one seen him before? She zoomed in on the digital scan, her fingers trembling. On the man's wrist was something glinting faintly in the sunlight. A watch. But not just any watch, it was engraved with something. 2 letters. EL. Her breath caught. EL were Ethan's initials. That night, Margaret didn't sleep. She scoured old police records, digital archives, missing persons forums, anything that could explain who that man was. And then she found it. An article from March 1998 about a janitor named Edward Lang, who had worked at Evergreen for only 6 months before vanishing the same week as the children. His file said no known relatives and no forwarding address and no record after disappearance. Her hands went cold. Could this EL be him? And if so, how did her son's initials end up on his watch? She went back to the photo again. This time she noticed something even stranger. In the reflection of another window, barely visible, there seemed to be shapes. Not human shapes exactly, but tall, shadowy figures with elongated arms standing deep in the fog. For a second she thought it was a trick of the light, but her gut screamed otherwise. Margaret whispered to herself, "What did you see, Ethan? What did he take you to?" At that moment, lightning flashed, and for the briefest instant she thought she saw the reflection move. The shadow in the photo seemed to turn toward her, its eyes glowing faintly, as if aware of being seen after all these years. Her phone buzzed suddenly, breaking the silence. A message from an unknown number. It contained only one image, a photograph of a forest trail wet with rain, and a wooden signpost barely visible in the mist. Carved into the wood were the words, "Evergreen awaits." Margaret dropped the phone, her body trembling. After 27 years, the trail was calling her back. The next morning, Margaret packed her old car with nothing but a flashlight, a camera, and the photograph. The message still burned in her mind. Evergreen awaits. For 27 years, she had begged for a sign. Now that she finally had one, it felt more like a warning than an invitation. The drive to her old hometown took hours. The once lively village of Evergreen Hollow now stood half deserted, its wooden houses weathered by time. The school itself had been abandoned long ago. Windows shattered, playground rusted, its gates chained shut. A cold wind swept through the hollow halls as Margaret stood before the building where her son had vanished. "Ethan," she whispered, "I'm here." She climbed the chain-link fence and entered the overgrown courtyard. The air was heavy with silence. Inside, the halls were filled with peeling paint and faint echoes of laughter that weren't really there. Every classroom door creaked open as if inviting her in. Dust danced in beams of light filtering through broken windows. She reached room 4B, Ethan's classroom. The chalkboard still had faint writing on it. Field trip tomorrow. A date followed, April 3, 1998, the day they disappeared. Margaret felt her chest tighten. On one of the desks, she noticed something scratched into the wood. She wiped away the dust, revealing 2 letters, EL, the same initials from the watch. Her pulse raced. "Edward Lang," she murmured. The janitor. A sudden sound made her turn, a faint metallic clink echoing from the hallway. She froze, clutching her flashlight. "Hello?" No answer. Only the steady dripping of water somewhere in the dark. She followed the sound down the hall until she reached a basement door she didn't remember from before. The lock had been forced open, as if someone had already been there. Against her better judgment, she descended. The air grew colder with every step. The concrete floor was damp and a strange humming noise filled the space. When she reached the bottom, her flashlight flickered, and that's when she saw it. A mural. Painted across the basement wall was a massive, childlike drawing of a forest, tall black trees twisting into the sky. In the center was a circle of figures holding hands. Children. Around them stood larger, faceless shapes. Above, written in red paint, were the words, "Evergreen remembers." Margaret stumbled backward. Her breath fogged in the cold air. Then she noticed something lying beneath the mural, a rusted metal box. Inside were Polaroids, dozens of them. Each photo showed the same group of children in the woods, some smiling, some crying. In the corner of every picture, barely visible, a man stood watching. Always the same one, the dark coat, the pale eyes. Her heart nearly stopped when she found the last photo. It was of her son Ethan sitting on a fallen log. But he wasn't 8 anymore. He looked older. Maybe 12, maybe 13. The photo was dated 2004. Margaret dropped the picture. That wasn't possible. The children vanished in 1998. How could there be a photo 6 years later? Her flashlight flickered again, then went out completely. For a moment she was swallowed by darkness. She could hear her own heartbeat echoing in her ears. Then from the far end of the basement came the faint sound of children singing. A nursery rhyme, soft, distant, and impossibly real. Margaret's voice cracked. "Ethan?" The singing stopped. Silence. Then a whisper, a voice so small and fragile it made her knees go weak. "Mom?" The flashlight came back on. The basement was empty. Margaret stumbled up the stairs and out of the building, gasping for air. The world outside seemed wrong, too still, too quiet. The forest beyond the playground looked darker than she remembered, as if it were waiting for her. And when she turned back toward the school, she saw it, etched into the cracked front doors with something sharp. "Follow the path." Her trembling hands reached for her phone. The same unknown number that sent her the forest photo had sent another message. Just 3 words this time. "He's still there." Margaret's heart pounded. She looked toward the tree line, the same misty woods from her son's class trip all those years ago. And despite the fear clawing at her chest, she stepped forward. The forest had always been there, looming behind Evergreen Elementary like a dark secret. Locals used to tell stories about it. They said the woods were older than the town itself, that compasses spun wildly near its heart. But no one ever believed, until 24 children vanished within its mist. Margaret stepped past the rusted school gates, her boots crunching on dead leaves. A trail stretched before her, a narrow path that disappeared into the fog. The same one from the message photo. Her flashlight beam quivered as she whispered, "I'm coming, Ethan." The deeper she walked, the quieter the world became. No birds, no wind, just the soft rhythm of her footsteps and her pounding heart. At first, she tried to reason with herself. Maybe someone was playing a cruel prank. Maybe the photo had been staged. But the deeper she went, the more the forest seemed to breathe. The trees leaned closer, branches stretching like hands. She could swear the ground pulsed faintly beneath her feet like something alive. After nearly an hour, the path widened into a small clearing. In its center stood an old wooden signpost, half buried in moss. The letters were barely visible, but she recognized them instantly. Evergreen Camp, 2 miles. Her throat tightened. The class trip destination, the same one they'd never returned from. As she stared at the sign, her phone buzzed again. Another message. A photo, taken from behind her. She spun around, shining her flashlight through the mist. Nothing, just the shifting fog. Her voice cracked.
"Who are you?"
Silence. Then a whisper floated through the air, carried by no wind. Closer. She nearly dropped the phone. The voice was faint, childlike. Ethan's voice. Margaret pressed forward. The fog thickened, swallowing her light. The trees grew denser, their trunks marked with strange, spiraling carvings. It almost looked like someone, or something, had drawn maps onto the bark. As she touched one, her fingers burned cold. Images flashed in her mind. Children running, a man calling their names, laughter turning into screams. She stumbled back, gasping for breath.
"Ethan, please just tell me where you are."
Somewhere ahead, a twig snapped. Then another. Footsteps. She turned her light and froze. A figure stood between the trees. Tall, wearing a dark coat. His pale eyes gleamed through the mist. "Edward Lang," she whispered. The man didn't move. For a long, terrible moment, they just stared at each other through the fog. Then slowly he lifted his hand and pointed deeper into the woods, toward a faint orange glow flickering through the trees. Margaret's instincts screamed to run, but something stronger pulled her forward. She pushed through the undergrowth until the glow became clear, a campfire burning in a perfect circle of stones. Around it, dozens of small objects lay scattered. Old shoes, school bags, crayons melted into the dirt. Her heart broke as she picked one up. It was a small rock painted with blue glitter. Ethan's favorite color. Tears blurred her vision. "You were here." A sound cut through her grief, a laugh, high-pitched, familiar. She spun around, and for a split second, she saw him, Ethan, standing between 2 trees, barefoot, his hair longer but his face unmistakable. "Ethan!" she screamed, running toward him. But as she reached out, the fog swallowed him whole. He was gone. Her flashlight flickered, then died again. In the dim orange light of the fire, she saw shapes moving beyond the circle, small silhouettes shifting in the haze. Children, whispering, humming softly, their faces hidden by shadows. They circled slowly, their voices weaving a haunting melody. Then, from behind her, a deep voice echoed, "You shouldn't have come." Margaret spun around. The man in the dark coat stood only a few feet away. His expression was calm, almost sad. "Where are they?" she cried. "Where's my son?" He tilted his head. "They're home. You left them here long ago." "What are you talking about?" she demanded, backing away. He stepped closer. The firelight caught his watch engraved with E.L. Evergreen Remembers, he murmured. "And now, it remembers you." Before Margaret could move, the fire flared violently, blinding white. The children's voices rose in unison, chanting something she couldn't understand. The ground beneath her feet trembled, then split open, revealing a dark void below. Margaret screamed as she fell. The fall felt endless. Margaret's scream vanished into the darkness as she tumbled through cold, weightless air. Then impact. Her body hit damp ground, the wind knocked from her lungs. For a long moment she lay still, gasping, the world around her eerily silent. When she finally opened her eyes, her flashlight flickered weakly beside her. She picked it up and froze. She wasn't in a cave. She was in a hallway. Old tiled floors stretched beneath her feet, the walls lined with lockers coated in grime. A faint smell of chalk and dust filled the air. It looked exactly like Evergreen Elementary, but underground. "What is this place?" she whispered. Somewhere ahead, a bell rang. Not an echo from memory, real, sharp, and close. Footsteps followed, small ones. Children. Margaret's hands trembled as she turned the corner. At the far end of the hallway stood a classroom door with soft light spilling through its window. She pushed it open, and her heart shattered. Inside sat rows of children at their desks motionless, their faces pale, eyes distant. They didn't blink, didn't move. They looked exactly as they had 27 years ago. Same clothes, same small backpacks. Time hadn't touched them. Margaret's voice cracked. "Ethan?" A boy in the second row turned his head slowly. His eyes met hers, and they weren't lifeless. They were full of pain. "Mom?" he whispered. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she ran to him. She cupped his face, trembling. "Oh my God, Ethan. It's really you." He felt real, warm, breathing, but his expression was heavy with fear. "Mom," he said, his voice shaking. "You shouldn't have come. He won't let us go." "Who?" she asked. "Edward Lang?" Ethan nodded weakly. "He said we belong here now. That evergreen keeps us safe." "But it's not safe, Mom. It's hungry." Before Margaret could speak, the lights flickered violently. The children all turned their heads toward the front of the room in unison. The air grew cold, and a low hum filled the walls. The blackboard began to move, letters scratching themselves into the dust. Class dismissed. The door slammed shut behind her. Desks scraped against the floor as invisible force pulled the children backward. Ethan clutched her hand tightly. "Run!" he cried. They burst into the hallway, the humming growing louder. The walls twisted like rippling water, lockers bending, tiles cracking underfoot. Margaret held Ethan's hand as they ran through the dark, corridors that seemed to rearrange themselves with every turn. Then they stopped. Standing at the end of the hallway was Edward. He looked older now, his face pale and sunken, his coat frayed and soaked. His eyes glowed faintly in the dim light. "You've taken them once," Margaret shouted, her voice echoing. "You won't take them again." Lang tilted his head almost kindly. "I didn't take them, Margaret. I saved them." "Saved them? From what?" He raised his hand toward the trembling ceiling. "From the world that forgot them, from time, from pain." "You trapped them," she screamed. "They're children." "They were," he said softly, until Evergreen woke up. The floor split behind him, revealing the same endless darkness she had fallen through. Within it, faint figures moved, shapes like roots or tendrils pulsing as if alive. The school itself was breathing. Ethan's voice trembled. "Mom, it's the forest. The forest isn't outside. It's under us. It's everywhere." Lang stepped closer. "The forest remembers those who vanish. It feeds on memory. It needed someone to keep the children safe from the forgetting. That's why it chose me." Margaret shook her head. "Then it can choose me instead. Let them go." Lang paused. His hollow eyes flickered with something human for the first time. "You would take their place?" "I already have," she whispered, pulling Ethan close. "I lost my life the day they disappeared." For a long moment, Lang stared at her in silence. Then he reached for her hand, and the entire hallway went white. When the light faded, she was standing alone. No Lang, no children, no school. Just the quiet forest at dawn, mist curling around her like smoke. In her palm lay a small, cold object, a watch, engraved with 2 new letters. M.L. Margaret collapsed to her knees, clutching it to her chest as the morning light broke through the trees. The forest was silent. Dew clung to the grass, and a pale orange light filtered through the pines. Margaret sat trembling at the edge of the woods, clutching the old watch in her hand. M.L., her initials, engraved beneath the faint scratches of time. The forest had given her something back, but what had it taken in return? For a long time she sat there listening. The hum of the forest was gone, replaced by the faint rustle of morning wind. The air felt lighter now, as though a burden had lifted, but inside her a storm still raged. Had it all been real? The school beneath the ground, the children, Edward Lang, the endless fall? Or had she finally gone mad chasing ghosts? Then from behind her came a sound that made her heart stop. Footsteps. Small ones. Margaret turned. A boy stood on the path, barefoot, wearing a worn blue jacket. His hair was shorter now, his eyes brighter, but she'd know that face anywhere. "Ethan," she whispered. He smiled weakly, tears in his eyes. "You found me." Margaret dropped the watch and ran to him, pulling him into her arms.
He felt warm, alive, real.
"I never stopped looking," she sobbed. "Never." For a moment, it was as if the years between them melted away. The birds began to sing, Sunlight kissed the treetops, and for the first time in 27 years, Evergreen Hollow breathed again. But then Ethan whispered something that made her blood run cold. "Mom." "They're still there." Margaret pulled back, confusion flooding her face. "Who?" "The others," Ethan said, his voice trembling. "The ones who didn't follow the light. They're still down there waiting." Before she could answer, the ground beneath them trembled faintly. A low sound, almost like a sigh, rose from the earth, then faded away. The forest was quiet again. Too quiet. "Ethan," she said, gripping his shoulders. "What happened down there?" He looked away, tears welling in his eyes. "Mr. Lang told us the forest wanted us to stay, that if we left, we'd forget who we were. But some of us, we wanted to go home. So he made a deal." "A deal?" Ethan nodded. Someone had to remember Evergreen. Someone had to keep it alive. He looked at her, his expression full of sorrow. "Mom, when you came back for me, you took his place." The words sank into her like ice. Margaret glanced down at the watch in her hand. It was ticking now, steady, rhythmic, alive. And with each tick, the forest seemed to breathe with it. She understood. The forest had chosen her. "I don't care," she whispered. "As long as you're free." Ethan shook his head, tears streaming. "No, Mom, you don't understand. If you stay, you'll fade, just like he did." Margaret smiled softly, brushing his hair back. "Then let me fade, knowing you're safe." He clung to her tightly, his sobs muffled against her coat. "I love you, Mom." "I love you too, baby," she whispered. "Now go home. Tell them we remember." The light around them began to shift, golden, warm, otherworldly. The trees swayed, though there was no wind. Ethan's body began to glow faintly, the forest light wrapping around him like a gentle embrace. Margaret could feel herself growing lighter too, her heartbeat slowing in rhythm with the ticking watch. Ethan's voice echoed softly. "Will I see you again?" She smiled through her tears. "Every sunrise, every whisper in the trees. That'll be me." And with that, the light consumed them both. Hours later, hikers found a small boy wandering near the edge of Evergreen Forest. He was barefoot, dazed, but unharmed. When they asked his name, he simply said Ethan Lane. When asked about his mother, he pointed toward the woods and whispered, "She's with the others now." Later that evening, as the rescuers combed through the forest, they found something half buried beneath the old school signpost. An antique watch, still ticking. Next to it, carved into the wood in trembling letters, were 4 words, "Evergreen will remember her."